What's up, guys? This is Artur for BluffTheSpot. When you play poker, do you feel like you're the bully at the tables? On today's video, we'll be taking a look at some hands people called me too light, making our aggression worth it. Before anything, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Let's get into the action. Alright guys, so on today's video, I'll be taking a look at some hands that I think they're either the opposite of some video I posted a few weeks ago, which was a video about throwing up a lot of aggression and denying a lot of equity, bringing your red line up. So if you don't remember this video, the link will be somewhere in the screen, maybe here, maybe here. So yeah, I think this good aggression pays up in game, and here today I'll be showing some aggression getting paid up by very light calls by my opponent. So let's take a look at some hands. So we'll start with this ace-4 of clubs on the button here. My opponent on the cutoff starts with a raise. I'll be 3-betting this hand most of the time. He goes for call. So in hand side here, I know I choose the wrong sizing, or something that I could be doing better is just a smalling, using a smaller size here in general. But I'm very used to go for like half pots and low boards, but I think I got confused on this one or something like this, and went for a half pot on this one as well, although I think the 1/3 size would make more sense on this board. So I'd like to see myself c-betting for 1/3 size. My opponent goes for a check, not surprisingly. We hit trips, and yeah, let's go ahead and c-bet. So our opponent calls here. I do think he's supposed to check raise a big amount of the time. Usually people play very badly on this 3-bet pots out of position because they end up calling too much. And you can do this test with yourself as well on your game. Whenever you call a 3-bet out of position and then you end up calling the flop, it always feels on the turn like you're on an ugly spot, or like if you're always beat, or you cannot do anything basically to outcome on a good results of your hand. So it's going to be a losing play in general to be calling out of position and then calling on the flop as well, and just going with calls. So you're going to get pushed around, and people are going to be doing a lot of aggressive stuff against you, and you're not going to be able to combat that. So the good thing here is that you should supposed to check raise the flop and deny a lot of equity. So some overpairs are going to want to check raise, and a lot of draws are going to want to check raise, mainly denying equity of this high card heavy 3-bet range that I'm going to have. So basically I'm always going to have 2 overcards, and basically any pairs of the out of position range here are going to want to check raise and deny the equity against those hands. So let's say I have a hand like Jack 10. Jack 10 cannot definitely not see a turn here, because otherwise it's just going to realize its equity. So check out of position check raising becomes very important here. So that's, I think, a very common lick on micro stakes and low stakes. So pay attention to that. Make sure you're not doing that in game, and include some check raises out of position. So I don't want to spend too much time here. He calls. We go to a turn. I'm not going to be stopping to bet this hand. I think people are calling too much with hands like 10s or jacks here. In instance that they should be 4-betting. So he's still going to have enough pairs to calm me down here, and even potentially some worse 4x's with something like 4 or 5 suited. Therefore, I definitely like continuing, and I'm just trying to size up for a river, size enough for a river jam. I think in hand side even slightly bigger sizing would make sense. But as you can see, he's left with 71 on a 78 pot, so it's completely fine. We hit the magical quads on the river, and here he goes for a check, obviously, facing a donk. But I guess you guys know it's a pretty easy decision, and we jam. So if we think about his range, he's not going to be able to call down too often. So oftentimes, if you see in solvers a hand like this, solvers are going to be wanting to bluff catch even with hands like ace highs, for example, blocking my best overpairs. In this case, I don't think you can probably get profitably enough calling this rivers triple barrels versus the general population tendencies that is under bluffing on these kinds of spots with triple barrels. So be careful with doing light calls, and that's where I think your image counts, because people are going to be wanting to call you down and like be suspicious about every line you're going to take. And yeah, the outcome is just going to be people calling you down with ace highs on boards like this. So analyzing his hand, I mean, uh, in some portion you're supposed to be calling pre-flop with ace king here, but I don't know, maybe 90% of the time or like 85% of the time you're going to be four betting anyways. So seeing this at the stakes they play, I just like to believe this is just probably a very tight player who was not really four betting too much with ace king out of position here. And then he thinks I'm aggressive and calls all the way through. So yeah, again, I don't think those calls are going to be very, very profitable on this stakes. And I think you guys should be careful with this. Also, if you see, he's also blocking like all of my natural bluffs, which are going to be spades and diamonds, so that's not great. Uh, yeah, all right, so we finished with the spots. Let's see the next hand. All right, moving on to 10-9 of hearts. I face an open draw on the button, and with 10-9 of hearts, I'll be 3-betting 100% of the time here. I'll be mixing with some other suited connectors. So I go to 11, which I like, and yeah, I think I already talked a little bit about sizing pre-flop, making his life difficult in position by sizing up out of position with my 3-bets. So on this board, again, I think it is a low board, it's lower than 10x's, etc. But I do think at this point Pi is probably going to start using the smaller sizes again, so I would like to see myself using a small size here, to be fair. And I'll probably even range bet here, to be fair, as I have a lot of ace x's myself. Yes, he's going to have some advantage of sets here, but I'll have a lot of advantage of overpairs that he doesn't have. So it's kind of a neutral board in which I can probably get away with range betting with my entire range. So we see bet with 10-9 of hearts here. My main bluffs on the turn are going to be some hearts in general. I don't mind betting and having to fold a hand like this. I would mind more something like a bet with something like an ace high flush draw that I have to fold, for instance, even though I'll probably call most of them. But my main fear here is having to bet and fold to a jam, which with this hand, if I bet and face a jam, I'm okay with it. I didn't even want to go all in with it anyways, because he can have better flush draws and things like that. So yeah, I'll be careful with hands. I'll be more careful when including two of my checking range, some flush draws that are maybe afraid to get jammed here. So I go for another bet. I think this size is going to be enough for us to set up for a river jam. We could even block bet here again, then still over bet jam for a slightly over pot size from the river. But I like to make the thing simple, and yeah, I went for around 2/3 or half pot. And the King of Hearts appears on the river. He played pretty much so far okay-ish because he's in position, so he's not supposed to raise much. And yeah, that's where it comes a pretty easy jam. I'll be checking some flushes at some frequency, but still mainly jamming on this card. As he can have a lot of 5x's himself, and some like he's gonna bluff catch so often with hands that he potentially even checks back. So hands like jacks with the jack of hearts, or nines with the 9 of hearts, even though we're blocking 10s and 9s here. So maybe pocket 8s or pocket 6s or 7s with the 7 or 6 or 8 of heart. So there's plenty of bluff catchers here, and yeah, so maybe some king x's that he's floating with. Potentially ace king or something like this. So yeah, just going with the jam on the river, very likely. And again, we see a very light call from my opponent. And yet again, I'll stress that maybe if you check Pio Solver or something similar like GTO Plus or any other solvers of no limit hold'em, you're gonna be seeing maybe some calls from ace queen. Specifically with this combo is great because you're not blocking my main bluffs, which are gonna be ace of hearts, and he's now also not blocking, blocking the best king x's of my range, which are going to be very natural gems on the river as well. And he's also blocking some flushes, so he has pretty good blockers in hand side. So I don't mind his call. Although in this population versus most of opponents, this is going to be very, very bad. So this opponent has to be very, very careful, and that's something you probably don't need to be doing even at 100 now, since people are not bluffing enough, myself included. Even though I consider myself sometimes to be spewy or too aggressive, I still don't think I'm massively over bluffing or over bluffing to the point where you want to be calling so sure. And I remember in game he snap called, so I'm not even sure if he thought about this hand being a very good combo selection. because he snap called, but it could be the case. So yeah, if he snap calls, then I think it's less likely of him having all of this thought process that I just told you guys. I'm blocking some stuff and blocking some others. Again, just don't think this is something you want to be doing at this stakes. All right, moving up to the next hand. So cutoff opens. We're gonna 3-bet with this hand on a quite frequent. We're gonna 3-bet with this hand quite frequently. He goes for a call, and on this board there's a little bit check raising than the low boards or mid boards, but still there's gonna be a quite good amount of check raises here. So from my side, I would just be range betting for 1/3 size, and he goes for a call. So on this turn, we could go both ways with this hand, to be fair. So naturally, what you want to be thinking on these turns, or on the turn in general with your top pairs, is how high am I on my range, and usually the higher kickers are going to be wanting to barrel. So hands like King Queen and Ace King are going to be wanting to barrel, while hands like King 10, even though it has the gut shot, is going to be wanting to check a little bit more often. So I guess I would like to see another bet from me, which is true. He goes for another call, and yeah, that's where it gets pretty close. Either we want to jam or not. I remember having some reads on this guy that he's starting to bluff catch against me, so I did went for a jam because I think I have enough I have enough value with this hand. Although it's going to be close, I do think I'm going to have enough value with this hand, so I'll be jamming. And he's calling with Queen Jack, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so you see here, if you start thinking about your opponent's range, I remember even thinking, I think this hand was played live on stream, and I remember thinking out loud during the hand things like this. So he can, what worse he can have to call here? So he can have King 10. He can maybe split with the same hand and maybe even fold, I don't know. Make a hero fold, but that's not what we're expecting. So we expect him to call with King 10, and there's a good portion of Ace Jacks as well on his range. People are going to be calling more often with Ace Jack offsuit than 4-betting out of position, which is supposed to be the opposite. Therefore, they're going to have two heavily Ace Jack offsuits here, which are a lot of combos at the end. So I think he's capable of maybe bluff catching Ace Jack against me, and then there's the King 10 region, and potentially even something very crazy like Queen Jack or Jack 10 here, because, well, people like blockers, people like blocking straights, and etc. So yeah, I think if we start thinking about what he wants to bluff catch, he's quite low in his range already, as he's going to have some King X's and some better Jack X's than this. So it starts to be a little bit dangerous, although he has blockers to the straight, as I said. But still think it's pretty wide. I think people are going pretty wide, and that's not necessary again. Alright, so for the next hand, 8-7 of clubs. This hand, it's a hand that I'll be 3-betting like probably 90% of the time or 80% of the time. One thing though is that you want to realize a few things, and those are the things that are important to realize in game, which are stack size of your opponent and open size of your opponent. So when he goes 2.5x here, you're more incentivized to call, and you're less incentivized to 3-bet, because you're basically getting a better pot odds to play in position here. So you don't need to also fight the rake with 3-bets, because when you 3-bet and the pot goes for a fold, and he goes for a fold, and you pick up the pot pre-flop, you're not going to be paying rake. So since the pot is smaller now, you're not that incentivized to 3-bet anymore to avoid the rake. So therefore, I will include a few more checks, but still probably 3-bet most often. So as an exercise, you can face a spot like this, and let's say if a hand is very close between 3-bets and calls. So maybe you get heavier towards the line of just calling because of his pre-flop size being smaller. So we 3-bet with a7 of clubs, and he calls. He's a recreational player. We already noticed that from pre-flop sizing and stack size, and he leads out for 5 big blinds here. So against leads or dunk bets, whatever you want to call it, I really like to play very aggressive with my air. When with hands like, let's say, Jack 10 or Queen Jack, I'll play more passively and just let him bluff. And then maybe with some sets like pocket 6s or pocket 9s here, I'll be maybe raising it up as well because I unblock Jack X's and he's gonna be having a lot of hands to call me down with. So in general, just raising a lot of donk bets, especially when he goes small. So I don't like my call here. I think I'll be doing better as a raise. So also especially with a hand that has so much equity. So I'm a bit surprised to see my call here. Anyways, we hit the flush on the turn and we're still drawing to the straight flush. So he continues barreling. At this point, I think we can go both ways. To be fair, the more aggressive I think he's going to be on Rick rivers or even on club rivers, the more I just want to call and let him do the job. And the more passive I think he's going to be on the river, the more I just want to raise and end the pot here because maybe he slowed down some rivers that he's not supposed to, or maybe he's slow down and check folding with hands that he would call and all in on the turn, and then I lose a lot of value. So I think here it's very villain dependent. I really don't remember what I did, but calling is fine and raising is fine. He continues betting. We hit the straight flush. I don't particularly love this hand the way I play it, but for the sake of the video and since we're hitting the straight flush and getting paid, I think it's completely fine. So yeah, I think pre-flop pretty much okay with 3-bet. He donk bets the flop. I would like to see myself raising, although calling is not a huge mistake, so I'm actually not that sad about this hand. And yeah, of course we call. He had the bluff with the Jack 8 suited. Okay guys, so for the last hand, I think that hand is pretty funny because it might be one of the biggest spots I played on the last month, from the last month until now. Because last month I played mainly 50 NL on party, as you saw me on the stream, and this month I'm playing 100, and this spot is very deep at 100 NL. So he opens for 4 big blinds. This guy is a massive recreational player who really likes fighting for pots. So he's that type of player that is going to be very aggressive with raising and yeah, fighting a lot for pots in general, even for big pots as well. So I go for a 3-bet here. In hindsight, I think I could even go bigger because he's already telling me he has some kind of good hands here with the 4 big blinds open. So I think even 14 big blinds, because we're slightly deeper as well, might be fine. He surprisingly goes for 4-bet, and I can go both ways here. I can call because yeah, if there's a hand we want to slow play, that's the hand. But since I knew he was liking to fight back a lot of pots, and he was likely also throwing bluffs if I 5-bet here, I decided to go for a 5-bet. I went for a pretty large one. In hindsight, I could go slightly smaller. It's actually it's pretty much a fine sizing. I like it. So he goes ahead and jams for 287.55 big blinds, which is $287. And he had pocket jacks. We hit the full house on the river, picking up a very nice $575 pot. 73 after rake. So yeah, that was it for today, guys. Alright guys, that was it for today. If you like this video, make sure you smash the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, let me know down below what you think about the hands I reviewed today, and I'll probably post something new already next week, so I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. GG.